Welcome to our worship service. There are so many places you could be on a Sunday morning. We're so glad you chose to be here with us, whether in person or on Zoom. If you are visiting, we are especially glad that you're with us. In this church, may you find a place of renewal, a place of peace, a place of community, a place of transformation, a place of inspiration, and especially may you find a place of love and acceptance. My name is Rita Salama. I'm your celebrant this morning, but I'm just one of a team of people who are part of the service today, as you can see from the list on the screen and in your order of service. And we are also welcoming Reverend Thomas back from his summer vacation. Yeah. Even though I'm a church lady and love to be here, sometimes I can't make it and choose to attend on Zoom. When I do, it always makes me smile when everyone turns and waves and says hello to the folks on Zoom. So let's do that now. It also makes me smile when we take time to welcome those around us. So let's take a moment to say hello to those people. There's conversations to be continued during the coffee hour in which you're all invited. It's so good to be together this morning in all the ways that we gather. We are so glad you're here. I have a few announcements. First of all, the order of service isn't quite correct, but we gotcha, so you can relax if things don't quite match up. And then there are a few announcements I'd like to highlight. There's the Circle Supper this Saturday at 6 p.m. at the Marshalls. Everyone's invited, but please RSVP. If you're new, this is a great opportunity to get to know people. And details are in the emailed announcements. The Cuff Campout is August 22nd and 24th at Squilchuck State Park. It will be a lot of fun. Details are in the emailed announcements. And we are also planning a worship service on the mountain that day with an alternative plan for those that are staying here in the valley. And the CUUF annual jewelry sale is set for September 18th through the 20th. And we're now accepting donations of jewelry and offers to help get the donations ready for sale. And you can guess where you can find the details of that. And if you do not get the emailed announcements, talk to a greeter and they'll get you on our email list. Today the service is about divine rights of kings. But the reason that we are all here on the land of the Piscosa is because to the European colonizers, owning land was a God-given right. This right was articulated in the doctrine of discovery, a policy enacted initially by the 15th century Catholic Church. After the expedition of Christopher Columbus, the 1493 papal edict made clear the duty, yes, the duty of Christian explorers to seize the lands of non-Christians. It claimed that the land anywhere, not under the flag of a sovereign Christian nation, could be taken by whoever discovered it, and whatever indigenous people found there be converted to Christianity. Their souls needed to be saved. At least that's the reason, the excuse given for taking the lands. Non-Christians were not recognized as legitimate landowners, and any lands discovered by Christian explorers were claimed as the property of the discoverer's nation. In 1792, U.S. Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson claimed that the doctrine of discovery was international law, which was applicable to the new United States government as well. The doctrine of discovery, which deprived the native people of the Americas of their land in the colonial era, was recognized as legitimate by the United States Supreme Court in 1823 and remains on the law books in the present day. We can't undo historical injustice, but we can acknowledge it Here at CUUF, we are committed to forming a relationship with the Pasquosa people as they seek to have all their rights recognized. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about our chalice lighting, a little introduction. A flame within a chalice is a primary symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith. Many of our congregations kindle a flaming chalice in gatherings and worships and feature the chalice symbol prominently. Many people are surprised to learn that lighting a chalice as part of a worship service was only found in UU congregations in the early 1980s. How it came to be is a story that begins with Nazi resistors. Originally, the flaming chalice was a two-dimensional image stamped on documents created by the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee to help Jewish refugees escape Nazi persecution on the eve of World War II. The design, which this is a newer version of the design, but the design had been hastily put together by the artist Hans Dusch, himself a refugee. He was working at the direction of the USC's director, Reverend Charles Joy, who believed that such a logo would make their paperwork look more official. Reverend Joy would later claim that the design was reminiscent of the lamps of holy oil used by the ancient Greeks and Romans on their altars, and that the flame itself represented a spirit of helpfulness and sacrifice. And now, if you will join me in the chalice lighting, the words are on the screen. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
That was essentially a call to worship to remind us what impels us and what moves us into worship, into Unitarian Universalist worship. But I also have these words. We say in gathering, welcome. We say welcome to all of you, to your joy, to your hope, to your pride. We say welcome to your grief, your fear, your anger, and all the parts of you that are not even ready to be seen and heard. Welcome to all of you. For we are people of faith, faith in our ability to grow, faith in the precious gift of each life, faith in the promise of learning and changing, trying and growing, faith in our capacity to know ourselves and each other ever deeply. Welcome to all who are here, gay or straight, bi, pan, lesbian, queer, questioning, unable to be contained in any word. Welcome to you who are trans, cis, gender queer, non-binary, intersex, agendered, beyond words. We welcome to you who are human. We welcome to you who love and are loved. Whether you draw your spiritual practices from ancient Hindu practice or Jewish or Christian, welcome to you. For you are loved here, you are blessed, you are welcome. May this time together be a blessing. May we be glad to be together in worship, and may we hold and uphold and come to see and feel more clearly what is of greatest value in our lives, and what we all share is of greatest value. So may it be. Amen.
Now we'll have our congregational singing. Now let us sing. The video will be on the screen, and it's our very own choir that will be leading us, so you can all stand and join in our choir.
Sometimes we have many people who are under the age of 18, and sometimes we have none at all, and yet inside every one of us, the 5-year-old, the 10-year-old, the teenager, is still there. We are people of all ages. Always we are a community of all ages. And I have this little message for all ages. Hey there. I want to ask you something. Do you feel powerful? Don't answer that just yet. Let me ask you something else. When you hear me say power or powerful, what do you think of? Do you think of flexing your muscles? Do you think of your favorite superhero in the comics with special powers? The fact is, we each have power. We all have power. Even a single word can have power, like the word power. Power, at its simplest, is simply how one thing influences another thing. One person affects or changes another person. That is your power. The sun has great power. It influences the whole earth, helps it grow life, plants and animals. It helps shape, it determines, it influences the seasons and the rhythms of light and dark on the planet. And yet people have power too, different and smaller in some ways. We also see that we are able to influence the earth. We have been noticing our ability, our power to change climates. Think about individual people. Think about someone who's a teacher in your life. Or think about your doctor, your parent. These people can have a lot of influence. They have power because they influence you. They're students and patients. They are influenced also by people and things around them. Some people use their power to hurt. You know, people who are strong enough to hurt you, maybe. You have met people like that, who use their abilities to influence you in hurtful ways. But there are always people who have a power to help, to heal, to inspire, to protect, even to give power to others. Power itself, its ability to change things and influence things, change people and influence people, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It is not a big thing or a small thing just by itself. And the person who decides what power is you. It's each of us. We decide power, what we will influence, what we will try to influence, what influence we have in the world. Maybe our power is found in small things, like just listening to someone carefully, or talking about an idea that matters to you. Maybe it's found in big things, like starting a fundraiser to help someone who's in trouble, or start a protest against something that you think is wrong and to find other people who think the same thing. One single person has the power to do great things, even when they don't think they can. We can choose to grow the power in our choices and in our actions. We can grow the power in those who help us, and we can grow, or we can actually take back power. People who influence us in bad ways, who try to get us to do things, we can choose not to be influenced by them and to go on the path that we have already chosen. Always we have this power with our words, with our thinking, with our actions, by recognizing that we do have power. And the best thing about power is you never have to use it all alone. Sometimes you may feel alone. But always power can be shared with others. Power adds up. When we combine words and actions and our individual power with those of others, we can make change. We can do great things together. That is why we create a community. That is why we are here, to see the power that we have and the role it plays in our lives and in the world. So look around. Where is the power in your life? Where does someone influence you, and where do you influence others? Think about that. And so now I ask you, do you feel powerful? Maybe not. Maybe you're thinking about it. Or maybe you realize you do have power. This came from a book by Julian Davis, who was trying to take power in his own life and help his kids take power and move people. He's a man with black skin and felt that there was not enough power given to people who had dark skin. And in that experience, he rose up, wrote this book, and I wanted to share his words with you. Now we have a time of honoring, a time of sharing. There is a great power in sharing things that are true in our lives and things that matter to us. And so we take a time to share. Sometimes we have a candle. I'm thinking, I think it's largely Lynn loves the ritual of dropping a stone in water. And so I kept that. And I think as we move through the fall, I may keep it. It'll just be about water. And then as we get to the summer solstice, or to the winter solstice, when we get to the solstice, we may shift the ritual back to lighting candles, to represent what it is that we want to share and what it is that we want to honor. But right now there's a dish of water, and there are stones here. I will come down and turn on the microphone, and then I'll invite each of you to come forward and to share together. When my wife and I, Amy and I, were raising our two little girls, there was a moment in that process that surprised me. Later, many other parents have told me the same thing happens to them. I asked my daughter to do something, and in a defiant tone, she responded by asking why. And what surprised me was my response. I said, "Because I said so." I'm a flexible person. I'm an easygoing person. I don't really tell people what to do very often. And in that moment, I did not want any questioning. I did not want any conversation or discussion. I wanted her to listen. For centuries, European nations especially were ruled by a single ruler, such as a king or queen, an emperor or empress. And in Europe, we decided that they ruled by divine right, that God had given them that position, God had given them that power, and that it was the duty of everyone else to honor their power. The idea, formerly known as the divine right of kings, is that the monarch did not win power, not gain it from warfare or anything else, but was chosen and put in power by God, and thus was only accountable to God, not to the people, not to any other earthly authority. Thus, to question the ruler was to even doubt God Almighty. And we heard echoes of that in the doctrine of discovery. It's an ancient idea. It has roots that go back way back, thousands and thousands of years, but it was reinforced and named by King James of England as he declared his power to create the Church of England in an essay titled "The True Law of Free Monarchies." Now, I also understand and have read about and tried to explore Asian cultures that had a parallel concept called the mandate of heaven. You would see the mandate. People would see that the heaven, the spiritual powers, Dharma, whatever you called it, the Tao, had chosen and selected and given a mandate to a person to guide a country, to rule that country. And people could tell when the mandate had been lifted if there started to be floods or wars or poverty or illness. At least that's how I understand how it works. And it's more complicated how it works in the cultures of China, and Korea, and Vietnam. But always this notion that the ruler should have absolute power and should not be questioned, should not be doubted. Someone noticed that kings would always win a boxing match. It's because they had a divine right, a right hook, right? In America, democracy replaced the whole idea of kings, the whole idea of divine right, not just because it was politically expedient, but because people began to believe in themselves, in the power of human beings, and the way in which we could decide that we should all have involvement and engagement in managing how we lived together. In the end, we chose to believe that power does not come from heaven above or some magic source. It comes from the people, from community, from a sense of togetherness. Now, this sermon for me began back in May when I was reading about Christian ideas that supported our current U.S. president on theological grounds. And then one of my neighbors, a very conservative neighbor, asked me if I thought God had chosen Donald Trump and saved him from an assassin's bullet so that he could do God's will to bring peace on earth. My immediate response was not very polite. Silently I thought, and I just said, maybe. Who knows? It's always possible that peace and goodness will come from this administration. It's possible. When I was a teenager, though, when I was a young adult, my most favorite movie in the world was Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I memorized at least 90% of that movie, word for word, and every little action. There's one moment when the king, King Arthur, who has been selected by God, meets a peasant woman and asks him who he is. And he says, "How do you do, good lady? I am Arthur, King of the Britons." But then this other guy who has notions of, different notions about how governments, talks about syndicated communist gatherings and things like that. And Arthur just gets tired of this guy talking back to him, and he finally says, "Be quiet. I order you to be quiet." And the woman suddenly says, "Order, eh? Who does he think he is?" And he says, very forcefully, "I am your king." And the woman says, "Well, I didn't vote for you." And he explains, "You don't vote for kings." And she says, "Well, how do you become king then?" And Arthur says, his voice filled with awe, music coming in, "The lady of the lake, her arm clad in the purest shimmering samite, held aloft the sword, Excalibur, signifying that I, Arthur, should be king of all the Britons. That is why I am your king." And of course, Dennis, who's been thinking about political things, says, "Listen, strange women lying in ponds, distributing swords is no basis for a system of governance. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate of the masses, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony." Arthur's response, of course, is, "Be quiet." And then Dennis says, "Oh, now and then tries to shut him up. He says, "Now we see the violence inherent in the system." This idea that kings were selected by God and empowered by God, of course, depended on a concept of God, which Ben Connect last week pointed out very clearly, was declared dead by philosophers by the 1800s, and then was announced on the cover of Time magazine in 1966. Ben didn't quote Martin Luther King's response. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. satirized this theology by saying, in a 1967 sermon, saying, "A few theologians are trying to say that God is dead. And I've been asking them about this because it disturbs me to know that God died and I didn't have a chance to go to the funeral." But we all know the simplistic childhood concept of God as a person like us who runs the universe and chooses our leaders really is dead, or is dead, at least within Unitarian Universalist communities. The idea that there is a being making choices about everything, and their goodness and their understanding of our needs should not be questioned. It's a good theology in some ways because it creates a sense of hope and hopefulness. People are often wondering why bad things happen, and it's a way of responding to it. There must be a good purpose. I see this often. Unitarian Universalists will hold to this idea that there must be something good in the bad that's happened. But I find it's really problematic to ask that question, why did this bad thing happen? It's really problematic to ask, why do good things happen? It's much more empowering and much more healthy to say, what can I do about it? Where are we going from here? And how can we all help each other deal with what has happened? Jesus, 2,000 years ago, preached his understanding of the world, his sense of the order of the world by referring to the kingdom of God. But in a world now where there are fewer kings, and kings no longer have divine right and absolute power, the whole idea of kingdom has to be modified. I really like Thomas Jefferson because Thomas Jefferson gave me my name Thomas. He was also deeply influenced by Unitarian ideas. But he still had this notion of God directing America and blessing America, and had a kind of fusion of theological, religious ideas with political ideas. But in the 20th century, there was a philosopher named Josiah Royce, and he was trying to come up with a humanistic understanding of a community that was guided by love and justice and goodness, but there was not a kingship. There was no king involved, because he was somewhat he was not an atheist in an absolute sense, but he had this sense that there's no person running the universe. And he came up with this phrase, the beloved community. He was really interested in loyalty. What gives us a sense of connection to other people, makes us feel loyal to those people, make those people feel loyal to us. He was trying to create that kind of community, and he called it the beloved community. And when King picked up that phrase and adapted it for both his religious and political purposes, he was very conscious that he was adapting Jesus' notion about the kingdom of God into a more secular, more humanistic way of talking about that kind of community. Of course, any notion of community and loyalty to a certain group of people can be very skewed. It can be hurtful. It can be divisive. Partial and exclusive identity are powerful, but they can also really hurt people. Racism was all about that. That there are certain people who have an identity and other people who have an identity, and the people with one identity are better than the other people and can control their lives. Instead of creating something that included the values of true, inclusive, radical, universalist justice, equity, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. We hold up those values because we know all of those are essential to create a beloved community. So democracy, for us, is partially a theological term. We say, as religious people, as Unitarian Universalists, that the power for goodness, the power for creating a truly fair and equitable and loving and compassionate society is in and amongst us, and it must live in human communities, and we need to find ways of noticing it, affirming it, and also criticizing the things that don't. Question the cultural emphasis on wealth, on material wealth, individual wealth, and possessions. This American culture has often seen that as the vision, the sign of the mandate of heaven and God's presence, instead of love and compassion. And really wanting to help people become citizens of this country instead of saying, well, those are foreigners. Really wanting to create goodness and health and well-being for everyone, no matter what their financial resources, as the sign says out in our lawn, that Medicare saves lives. Upholding a community of value, of valuing the worth of individuals. Even in our own congregation, we have no sense that anyone has absolute power or unquestionable power. Certainly not the minister. I have been I have known colleagues in Baptist churches who seem to have total control over things. And there are times where we have to give responsibility to certain individuals. But that responsibility is never absolute. It is never unquestioned. May give sometimes lots and lots of responsibility to a minister. Sometimes I've known colleagues who just like to take responsibility because they can see what needs to be done and they know they can do it well, so they just go ahead and do it. I'm a little ambivalent about taking on too much responsibility because I believe in the power of community. I believe in working with other people. And I find when I create a group of people, a community of people working on something, we will do great things. We will have insight. We will do better than if we just give one person. Sometimes we just have to give one person responsibility. Chair of Building and Grounds Committee. We need a chair right now. We don't have one. I'm just pointing out, it's good to have a chair. Someone who's coordinating things. In 1968, one of our Unitarian Universalist ministers noted to people publicly that he was gay. He was ordained and he was gay, and he was continuing his work. And his congregation affirmed that, and other people began to affirm that they were gay people, active as leaders in our communities, and they could be open about that. When I went to Lubbock, Texas, after I'd been ordained, the very first wedding that I did was for two lesbians. It was a beautiful wedding. I loved it. One of the quirky things about it was they put the Beauty and the Beast, the Disney characters, Beauty and the Beast, on the top of their wedding cake. It's kind of, we talked a lot about what that meant and about how many people saw gay people as like beasts, like monsters. And this wedding was an affirmation of their beauty and their rightness and their goodness. And Unitarian Universalists went on to become more and more active in affirming gay people. And then I was at General Assembly, National Assembly, and we had had all these conversations. When you see human beings get to be who they are, be welcome in a community as they are, and to become the best people they can, you see joy and health and well-being and power, and the community is richer and healthier. And then in 2015, I was at the National Assembly. 10,000 Unitarian Universalists had gathered, and we heard that the Supreme Court in Obergefell versus Hodges had declared that legally there was no reason to not allow gay people to be married, that they should have equal right, equal access. And it felt as though history was moving forward, and we kind of felt this sort of divine approval of the work that we had been doing, all the ways in which we had struggled for inclusion around, and that was echoed in my welcoming words. But the point was, it wasn't some divine voice. It was not some God-given power that helped us choose that path and affirm human beings. It was looking into the faces of other people to see the goodness and the joy that we could bring into their lives by affirming who they were and how they were, and teaching them how to live with that ethically, morally, lovingly, together. I've seen people over and over, their lives changed by the kind of community that we create. One that shares power, that shares the revelations of truth. No one is given absolute authority to say what Jesus said or what Buddha said. We are all given that power together to share it, to explore what it means in our lives, and to show what it means in our lives. I note that the IRS recently said that I can talk about political candidates without any fear of... I won't talk about a political candidate in particular, but I will talk about the fact that the word evil has come up a lot recently from the White House. Declaring people who disagree with, people who want to go a different path than the President of the United States as evil, specifically stated. A short while back, our president denounced a reporter for asking a question that Trump didn't like as a very evil person. A couple weeks after that, he declared the entire Democratic Party as an evil group of people. I want to denounce that idea of bringing that particular theology that gives people the right to condemn someone as evil and unworthy just because of one thing they do. I want to declare that as wrong, and I reject it because it undermines community, it undermines democracy, it undermines well-being and our ability to see and understand one another. And instead, I keep calling the world, calling and encouraging you to call the world and everyone that you know to come back together, to rise higher, to do better. And to help you further reflect on this message about power and shared power, I want Jim to sing a song. Jim has a song that he wrote. You can go ahead and warm your guitar up. He has a song called Rise that he wrote some time ago. We were talking about what song we would put into this part of the service. And he really felt that he wanted to sing this song, which is about a conflict he had with his neighbor who was very politically conservative, and how he wanted to respond to that conflict. Is that right? Yeah? Yeah.
Enough. Be the light, man.
Many faith traditions ask that their parishioners tithe, giving 10% of their income to the church. Some even demand it. It is seen as a commandment from God that must be followed. But Unitarian Universalists believe that you are free to give what you will, based on your conscience. Tithes are not required. Of course, if you wish to tithe, which some people do as a spiritual practice, we applaud your choice and will gladly accept your offering. What we do ask of everyone is that you consider what the congregation means to you and how it enhances your life and the impact that it has in our community. And then to follow your conscience and give generously, because giving is a way to commit to the values of our faith and sustain our congregation. We will now accept the offering. Thank you for blessing this congregation and this community with your generosity. And now please join in body or spirit to sing our congregational covenant. And Jim will lead us, and the words will be on the screen. And now, if you'll join us in the chalice extinguishing words that are on the screen. Oh, I forgot. We need your benediction, your prayer.
I call upon the Spirit of life, the Spirit of love, the Spirit of justice that moves in each of us. Let us know your presence by seeing it shining in the faces of all to whom we are connected. Love and justice and peace, may they rise and blossom wherever we have the power to make beloved community. Amen.
We wouldn't have wanted to miss that. And please join me in saying the chalice extinguishing words that are on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and embody in our lives until we are together again. And now if you'll form a circle around the perimeter, and we'll join hands and sing our closing song. But stay for coffee afterwards.